Thanks everyone for joining us at a slightly later starting December Cabinet meeting. Just to explain to colleagues on the call and those watching, due to some of the challenges that Google has faced, we are doing this in a slightly different way. So you're seeing a Google grid view of this meeting rather than just the speakers, but everything else should be proceeding as normal. But obviously warn everyone in the meeting that they're on camera and being streamed. This is clearly one of those virtual meetings, the final one of the year. I'd encourage people to only speak through me as chair, so please feel free to raise your virtual hand and also remember not to use the chat for anything other than drawing attention to something to me as chair. Clearly, this is the last public meeting that the Cabinet are going to be a part of as part of the holiday season. So I want to take the opportunity to wish everyone both a happy Hanukkah and a Merry Christmas in Hackney. And I hope what will be a better and happier new year in 2021. Clearly, the year for all of us and residents, council workers, public sector workers generally, has been an incredibly difficult one. It has got even more difficult today with the news that Hackney, as part of London, will be moving to Tier 3. I think most of us understand why that is the case. And I have to say that all of the statistics in East London and in Hackney have been moving in the wrong direction over recent days. I also would like to add that over the last month, we've sadly lost 13 more lives in Hackney to coronavirus. And I know that Hackney residents will want to do all they can during this difficult period to make sure that we keep ourselves and our loved ones safe. I won't reiterate what Tier 3 means. You can find that out for yourselves online, and obviously the council will continue to provide timely information to both residents and businesses and other parts of the public sector. But I think these restrictions serve as reminders to us all that the virus does not take a break over Christmas. And I know that people are following the guidance of staying safe and washing our hands and wearing a face mask and keeping distance. That is even more important during the Christmas period. And if people do decide to follow the guidance and form Christmas bubbles, it's really important to follow that guidance while you're doing that. And I would actually urge people to reconsider perhaps whether this is the right moment, given the rise in the virus, to do that this season. But I know those will be difficult decisions taking place in households, not just in Hackney, but across the country. That is probably all I have to say for my informal, formal introduction, other than I'm sure all of us would pay tribute to Dame Barbara Windsor, who passed away over the weekend and was a really big figure of stage and screen, but obviously had a deep connection to Hackney and played a part in showcasing some of the very best of both Hackney staff and our borough over recent years. And I'm sure our condolences would go to her family and friends. To move on to the formal part of the meeting, I've had apologies for absence for Councillor Nicholson. Are there any other apologies for absence? Not that I've been notified. I haven't been
Councillor Moema, unless she's on the call.
Okay, let's note Councillor Moema. In terms of urgent business, I haven't been notified of any urgent business. Declarations of interest.
I'm sure, Mayor Glanville, we've all got declarations of interest in relation to item 10.
Yeah, item 10 is obviously our voluntary sector community grants. I've checked it myself, and the only declaration I would want the meeting to be aware of, but I've declared previously as being a member and customer of the Community Credit Union. I didn't see some of the sort of the other organisations that some of us referenced, but if colleagues could go away and look at item 10, and by the time we get to that item, notify the meeting if they don't notify now.
I'll just add to that, I'm Chair of Chats Palace, it's in my register of interest, but just flag here as well.
Thank you. Okay. I haven't received, so moving on to item 4, I haven't received notification of any intention to conduct business in private. Someone seems to have turned their mic on. Okay. The none received, and unlike previous months, I've not received any notification of deputations, questions or petitions to the monitoring officer. Perhaps at this moment, I would like to reassure people watching that we have no plans to introduce any form of foxcull in the borough. Obviously, Mr. Weston will have a written response to the questions that you raised at our last meeting, but just to reassure anyone watching that that is not something that we will be exploring or looking to do. Item 6 is the overall financial position. I'm assuming because we've had meetings back to back that we haven't had a CPC minutes in between. So item 6 is the OFP. This report, I'll allow Deputy Mayor Renison to introduce it and place it in context.
Were you about to give us reason for lateness? No, well, just to clarify, in case people are wondering, reason for lateness is we wanted to factor in all the details of the spending review and share the latest position with members. I'll keep a very brief introduction. As people will have noticed, this is a slightly different overall financial position. That's due to the impact of the cyber attack and our ability to report on our financial position. But people will be relieved to know that that will be hopefully, well, not hopefully, that will be back to normal for the next OFP that will be coming to Cabinet. And obviously, all of our normal checks and balances, all the work we talked about previously of working with directorates to keep a close eye on spending at this time, all remains in place. It also has, so I think we'd actually had this spending review, but hadn't had time to include the detail. It might have even been on the day of, I can't remember at this point, but close to anyhow the last report. The detail of the spending review in there, which I'm sure will be of interest to people, and starts to offer some of the detail we've been calling for to help us set our budget for the next financial year. But we obviously are still waiting for the local government financial specimen, and we should be getting details of that this week, I believe. And on that note, I'll leave it there and as set out.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Renison. I think the other error that I was being asked to sort of correct is I don't think there is an exempt part of this paper, although the original cover sheet suggested that there might be. Can I just double check that that's the case, Deputy Mayor Renison?
Not that I'm aware of. I suspect that we've had a few with our sort of interim arrangements of papers a few times, haven't we, where we brought over agendas from previous agendas and therefore had appendices and things linked to that weren't. So no, no exempt appendices.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? We're happy to agree the report.
Agreed.
Agreed?
Agreed.
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 I think Councillor Kennedy's done the classic, but I won't draw any more attention to it. Thank you very much indeed. Item 7 is the capital update report, and just very briefly want to thank, I know, Deputy Mayor Bramble, Councillors Kennedy and Woodley, and definitely much more recently Councillor Woodley. We've all been paying attention to the needs of Shoreditch Adventure Playground. Some of us have paid visits and know that a huge amount of work has been put into the business case that we're seeing that underpins the capital update this evening, and we'll see investment in Shoreditch Adventure Playgrounds. There's also just shy of £1 million worth of investment in Clissold Leisure Centre. I think both clearly show our commitment to continue to invest in our infrastructure in the borough. And I note, as I said in my introduction, and I'm fresh from a visit on Friday to both the New Britannia Leisure Centre and the Shoreditch Park Academy Secondary School, that collectively with those projects and the Shoreditch Park investment, we're seeing almost £150 million worth of investment into Shoreditch, which historically and remains one of the most deprived parts of our borough. I also just wanted to draw attention to the fact that we continue to invest in fire safety, and I think this report updates Cabinet very clearly on the approach that we've taken, where we've uncovered any issues around fire risk assessments and cladding. We've been seeking to put those works right in a timely manner, but also making sure that our leaseholders aren't unfairly charged for those works. And again, that is something that I know leaseholders across the country continue to campaign on when it comes to housing association and private blocks. But we've been really clear on our strategy here, and I would urge others to follow suit. Other than that, I recommend the paper to Cabinet. I note that Councillor Burke has put his hand up. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. And fittingly, given what I'm about to say, you may even hear the sounds of children playing in the background this evening. But I just wanted to, without reiterating the points that you've made regarding the extensive amount of investment that's going into the adventure playground, the broader park, and the New Britannia Leisure Centre in Shoreditch, thank all of the cabinet members and the officers who put so much work into this. And for some of this, it goes back a number of years, and we will recall the hard nights at public meetings making the case for particularly the New Britannia Leisure Centre. But as we see it erected for the benefit of local residents, we can't help but feel, I think, vindicated by the tough decisions that we made early in this administration to deliver these things for the benefit of the people of Shoreditch and Hoxton and beyond. I'd just like to note the particular emphasis on the needs of children. I think if there's one thing that could be said about this administration, it has been our relentless focus on building a borough for everybody from the ground up, from the needs of our most vulnerable citizens who happen to be our children. I think these investments leave an absolutely fantastic legacy for this administration and demonstrate our clear commitment to the future. So I'd like to thank everybody who's put in the hard yards to deliver this series of hugely important investments.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Couldn't agree more with that. Did anyone else want to come in or comment? Councillor Woodley.
I mean, only to say the obvious, that I'm so thrilled that this has been agreed for the adventure playgrounds, and I know that the adventure play workers are really pleased as well that the work that they've put in this year has been recognised with a gesture like this. And actually, the whole sort of focus on play in Shoreditch Park is a really exciting area of development that ties in very much with our child-friendly places work and our moves towards having a child-friendly borough. So just thank you.
Thank you. And I just, reiterate thanking you, Councillor Woodley, for bringing this over the line, and also all the co-production that's happened, both in the park work and also the adventure playgrounds.
Mayor,
yes. Did you want to come in, Deputy Mayor Bramble?
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Just to support what my colleagues have said, and I know that I really enjoyed my visit to the adventure playgrounds during the half term, and it was great to see what children and young people and staff were doing in that space and how much it's really appreciated. And speaking to a young person who recently was now the deputy leader in one of the playgrounds, was someone who used it as a child. So just the sentiment that it means, it is just phenomenal.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. That was a very nice note to finish on. Are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
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 Item 8, Councillor Burke, the abandoned, untaxed, obstructive parking vehicle policy. I know that the residents of Stamford Hill will be eagerly awaiting this paper, I should imagine, as well as other places in the borough. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. This is a fairly detailed paper, but the kind of précis of it is a new focus on addressing the persistent problem of untaxed and abandoned vehicles in the borough, which present a health and safety and environmental threat. And this piece of work should allow us to deal with this problem in a more timely fashion. And as you note, the problem in the borough is unevenly distributed due to the uneven distribution of controlled parking zones. And controlled parking zones do allow us to identify these problems earlier, and therefore those areas that don't have CPZs tend to be more afflicted. But irrespective of whatever decisions are made in future around controlled parking in the uncontrolled areas, this policy should allow us greater focus and to be able to take action in a more timely manner than we've been able to do previously. So I commend it to Cabinet. It has my full support, and I'd like to thank the officers within the Park and Services team for the work that they have undertaken to deliver this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Burke, and thank you to the officers collectively for joining us, some of them joining us this evening. Do we wish to debate the report or have any further questions, or happy to agree it?
Admittedly, it's not, Chair, as exciting as adventure playgrounds, but I think beneficial in its own way.
I could wax lyrical, Councillor Burt, but I won't do that for brevity's sake. Are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. So item 9 is the Ageing Well strategy, and I think illustrates perfectly that we don't just focus our attentions on the next generation and young people, and we spoke very clearly about our commitment to the young people of the borough earlier on, but had also wanted to do this piece of co-production with older residents in Hackney. I'm going to ask Councillor Kennedy to very briefly introduce the paper as it's in his name, but it'll be no surprise that our relatively new mayoral advisor for older people, Councillor Maxwell, also wants to speak to the paper. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you very much, Chair. Your appointment of a mayoral advisor for older people shows the commitment of this administration to older people, and with no further ado, I will hand over to that mayoral advisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. I'd like to start off really by thanking officers for all the hard work that's gone into this strategy and for their commitment to co-production to ensure the voice of older people is at its centre. I'd like to thank Sonia Khan for ensuring this strategy was kept a priority during the pandemic. There were many other commitments and pulls on the time, but Sonia made sure that this stayed a commitment. So I'd like to thank Soraya Saheed for her hard work and commitment and for continuing to develop the strategy as we go through COVID and to ensure the Ageing Well strategy is fit for purpose as we move through and eventually out of it. But this strategy is not static. The resulting action plan will be a living and responsive document that can adapt and change as needed, and the implementation will continue to involve older people through co-production and governance. It is also the responsibility of all the departments and portfolios. In the coming months, myself and officers will be meeting with Cabinet members to fine-tune the action plan that will sit alongside it. Older people need to be considered in all aspects of our work and their voice part of all we do as a council. And this strategy will link with other strategies and policies as older people are central to all we do. And this work has already started. We haven't waited for the strategy. Examples include around intergenerational work, such as officers making contact with older people's groups on the work of the child-friendly borough. And officers working on the park strategy will be making contact with older people's groups as well. Intergenerational work is a key theme of this strategy, and older people were clear they didn't want to just be meeting and interacting with older people. And this message also was one that came from the recent Hackney Young Futures Commission work. This strategy looks at the strengths of older people, challenges ageism and stereotypes, and looks at the diversity of our older population. Older people bring so much to our borough. This strategy will work to ensure this continues and work to address obstacles to that. It looks at the support older people need, but also recognises the role many older people play in the community, working, volunteering, family carers as part of our culture, and this has been going on through the crisis. So I'd like to commend this strategy to Cabinet, and I'm sure I can count on all of your support to achieve this.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. I know this is a really important report, and just like to pay tribute to your work and the work of the officers here this evening that have kept this a strong focus on this during the pandemic. And I think it's a really critical part of rebuilding Hackney, that the experience of older people and that their lives are front and centre of how we rebuild Hackney in an inclusive way going forward. Do we have any other questions or comments on the report? Happy to agree. Agreed?
Agreed.
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 Agree.
Fantastic achievement, and also only the start of a journey, really. That's what's really important about it. This is not a strategy that is going to sit in any virtual or physical desk drawer at the council. So thank you again. Item 10 is our Place for Everyone Hackney Voluntary and Community Sector Grants key decision. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you very much. I'd like firstly to thank Sonia Khan and Claire Whitney, who are both on this call, for their work on this. Members are being asked to approve the 6 recommendations set out in paragraph 3 for a spend of nearly £2.9 million on on these community and voluntary sector grants. This includes nearly £500,000, which will be for grants to organisations providing our response to COVID. It includes a further £260,000 in grants to our adventure playgrounds, obviously not including the one at Shoreditch Park, which we've just very rightly approved a much larger spend on. And it also includes a 1-year extension to the Specialist Advice Services grants. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. I think it just shows our continuing commitment to the voluntary sector and also the hard work of the officers that you mentioned. And it's really clear when you go across London, I'm sure colleagues find it, that our commitment to the voluntary sector and backing up that commitment with stable and sustainable funding, it has been such a vital part of our response, but also signals us out as being quite different than many other boroughs. And we've maintained that commitment throughout austerity. So huge tribute, and obviously that rollover of some of those grants is really important given the instability within the sector and the challenges that residents face that rely on these voluntary and community sector organisations. I'm seeing a lot of nodding, which is really good. Are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Great.
Great, thank
Agreed.
you.
Chair, I did put in the chat earlier that I'm on Hackney Playbus trustee board, but just for ease, I've mentioned it again and echo your sentiments. I think it says a lot about what we're trying to do in Hackney at a very challenging time, that we're still very committed to the voluntary sector for very good reasons, because we're thankful for all that they help us to do.
Just to say agreed, because I didn't get to come in.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. There are no appointments to outside bodies, I don't think, this evening, nor any other unrestricted business that I would consider urgent. Item 13 is just to note future meetings. So hopefully we will be regrouping on the 25th of January. Clearly there is a lot that is likely to happen between now and then. And as I mentioned earlier, there are no exempt items of business. So I wish everyone here and watching a very safe couple of days and a Merry Christmas if you're celebrating, and look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.